Next thing I'm going to take off, there is steps to do this. I'm going to just go work myself from the top down, and I'm going to take off all the electrical connectors. This one going across here has a bunch of them in there. It has one for the alternator. We're going to get that off. There's basically a little clip which you can't really see, but lift the clip off, it pops right off. This is the clip. If you get a little teeny flathead screwdriver, put it in there, lift up on it, you can pull this right out. That's just a single wire plug there. Then now we're to each injector. Each one of these injectors has a plug that sits right on the injector with 2 wires coming out of it. These are really easy to get off. And you zoom right into that clip right there. Basically that clip, you just push it in, it releases it, you grab it, lift it up, wiggle it, it pops right off. So again, you basically push this clip in and it releases the little clasps that hold this on. You do that for each one. Then we have 3 more sensors. One's a mass airflow sensor, one's a throttle position sensor, one's an idle air control valve. They're all 3 different plugs, so you can't really mix them up. This would be a good time if you were worried about mixing them up. Either take a little quick picture or mark them like yellow, yellow, white, white, red, red, so you know which one goes where. But pretty much everybody's cell phone now has a camera on it, so pop a picture with your cell phone. You can look at it later when you got to put these back. Same thing, just pry up on the clip lightly. These can break right off, so lightly pry up. Don't grab it by the wires, grab it by the connector, wiggle it, it'll pop right off. This one you don't have to disconnect because it's really not in the way, but just to get this whole wire out of the way. This is that EGR valve again. And you can take this whole wiring harness, lay it out of the way. Okay, now we do have some spark plug wires we got to worry about. These are basically laid across the intake, so we're going to need to get these out of the way. There's a little clip here that holds them in. You just kind of pry down on there and pop it out like that, and you can pop these wires out. These wires you want to mark also. If you don't mark these, or if you don't have some kind of a good schematic or a drawing of how they went down, you can mix these up. If you mix these up, you're going to mess it all up because it's not going to be firing the right cylinder. So before I disconnect them, I'm going to actually mark them to show you how to do it. Right now I'm just kind of moving them out of the way. I'm going to take this airbox off and start getting down into here. Watch this stuff closely. There's a lot of little teeny nuts and bolts you got to take off. Just don't want to lose any. Look real closely how it goes together. Sometimes you can save steps. I'm going to attempt to take this whole unit off as one. I'm going to take the air tube off first. And all you got to do is loosen those. You don't have to unscrew them all the way. That pops off. That pops off and you can set it out of the way. You don't really have to take this entire airbox out of the way. If you wanted to, there's a bolt here and a little connector here. Just unscrew that and you can get that out of the way. I'm going to attempt to do it without removing it. And this is the throttle body. This is all aluminum. It's got a sensor on top called a mass airflow sensor. These are very common to go bad. And there's 2 or 3 bolts that hold this entire throttle body to the intake. I'm going to attempt to take those 2 and 3 bolts off and lay this whole thing off to the side so I don't have to take everything off. This here also has to pop out. I believe it's got a little. These are rubber hoses. You got to watch these closely. Usually this twists and pops out. Got to get a better look at it. If you look at these closely, these things are they're just starting to come apart. See that dry rot there? That's just a problem waiting to happen. This one's probably already happened. So this is special. This is the fuel pressure regulator. It's all rusted at the top where oxidation and moisture's gotten in from that hose being no good. So we're gonna probably end up replacing all these little heater hoses. For now, okay, this is basically just vacuum. It allows the upper intake vacuum to draw vacuum on different things. Like this is your brake, your power brake booster. You can follow the line all the way down to your brake booster. This is what gives you power brakes. Got another one here that goes up to something. It's possibly cruise control or helps with your air conditioning. Now this one goes to cruise control. You can see it go right down to the cruise control module. And then there's some others here. Basically, if these lines weren't all dry rotted, you could just move this out of the way and put it to the side and not deal with it. Just leave it all connected. If you do have to connect it, I'd suggest taking a picture because these are tough to get back together. General Motors instructions probably tells you to take every single one of these pieces apart separately, but I hate to do that. You can save yourself a lot of time, a lot of steps. So again, I'm going to try and take this entire throttle body off at one piece without having to take it all apart. Just looking where the bolts are at. There's a big one back here. It holds this big bracket on for the throttle cables. Then there's two bolts that hold this throttle body on. So I'm going to go ahead and start popping that off. I think I'll take the bracket off first. Now, whoever had this off last certainly didn't tighten it up enough. Now this isn't extremely important. This is just a heat shield for the exhaust manifold. You definitely need to keep the heat shield in place. It basically prevents the extremely hot exhaust manifold from permeating the heat up to the throttle cables. That's basically what I removed, just that little heat shield. Now I can get to the bolt that is holding this bracket on. Not going to take it all the way off. I'm basically just going to loosen it so that I can move the this bracket. If I need to get it all the way off, I can. But again, I try to leave everything in place. Okay, so now that that's off, I'm going to pop the bolts off that are holding the actual throttle body on. The back side, if you look, there's actually studs that go through this intake. I'm working on this one right here. The back side of this intake manifold, you can see it's just a stud that goes through, and that's spinning. So it is hexed, so a wrench will fit on it. I'm going to get a wrench in there and hold it while I pop the nut loose. This EGR tube that's caused most of the problems here, the way this comes off, this actually just twists. You can see how it's held in. It's almost a quick disconnect. It basically just twists out of the way. There it goes. And then that'll pop out, but I got to get this bottom. This is metal. It is slightly flexible, sort of. You can see it's kind of intended to flex, but you don't want to flex it too much because it'll break. So I'm going to pop that bolt off of there. It looks like a 10mm. Yeah, that should pop off of there. And it does. And let's try and get it out of here. And it comes out. Okay, this is the culprit that causes most of the problem. This is an EGR valve. I'm sorry, this is the EGR tube. This lets hot exhaust gas come back up through this tube, go directly into the intake. Unfortunately, it gets extremely hot, and that's what melts the inside of this. That's what's a big cause of this problem is. So I got that out. That had to come out anyway. I've got access to that stud now, or I can do plan B. Plan B is leave the whole thing on there and take it all off and take it on over to the bench and do it where it's a lot easier, which is what I think I'm going to do, but that makes me have to take these throttle cables off. That's very simple. It's just got two little clips. You lift the clip up. This is what the clip looks like. It's got a small end and a big end. Where the big end, this clip is holding in place. You lift the clip up, slide it over to the big end, and it pops right out. Then the cable just lifts right off. There's a top cable and a bottom cable. Both the throttle cables are off. Take these two little bolts off. Now remember, I left that bolt on, so this, I could just push this out of the way or put a bungee cord here and hold it, but I'm just going to take it out the rest of the way. There, now that whole thing can just lay off to the side. Oops. Lost a little vacuum hose. That's not going back on anyway. Okay, now I can get to this last bolt here, which is right here. See if this stud, actually I was gonna leave that. Okay, that one loosens. See how this one loosened and the stud didn't turn?